Welcome. You are on the Success Secrets for Business, Family, and Life channel. This is the Coffee Break Show. I'm Vickie Helm, and today we are going to rock your socks. I have Philippe Bouissou with me on the show, and you are going to learn some of the most powerful ways to grow sales and leads in just a moment. We will see you in just a second. Hey, this is the Coffee Break Show. Philippe, welcome to the show. I'm really excited you're here today.
Thank you,
Really
Vickie.
excited.
Thank you for inviting me on the show.
You know, I want to start at the very beginning because I read your bio and wow, it's impressive. You have a Ph.D. You have built companies, been acquired by companies, been a venture capitalist. You are the man who took Apple from 0 to 350 million. There was so much that you've already done. I couldn't fit it on a scroll. I mean, I was like, okay, I'll take a little portion of this. And you have discovered a way that you call it's a blueprint is what you call it.
Mm-hmm.
And this blueprint is designed to help businesses scale their sales by really connecting the dots. And I started thinking about that, and I was really excited to have this conversation with you. And I wanted, first off, how did you get interested in this? How did you get, what was it that made you like, this is where I want to learn, this is where I want to be, and this is the thing I want to know? And you've been so good at it and teaching it as well. So how did you get here? What's your journey?
Well, then, thank you for asking this great question. I have been in Silicon Valley for 31 years. I am an entrepreneur at heart. I'm fascinated by the idea of transforming an idea in somebody's brain into a real business. And that journey is something that is really fascinating to me. One of the things that you forgot to mention in my bio is the many, many failures that I've had. And those are really learning experiences. I've always grown and I've always learned from failing, not so much from success. And that's something that I think is to recognize. I believe that one of the most vexing challenges that any entrepreneur, any CEO, any business leader is facing is, what should I do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock to grow my business faster?
Yes.
And it's a deceptively simple question, very similar to the question that many of us ask ourselves, which is, what do I need to do on Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday to be a good parent? And there are thousands of books about parenting, but you cannot go to school and get a diploma or get a certificate that says this is how you become a good parent. And in a way, the challenge of growth is very similar. Companies are like kids and like human beings. Every one of them have their own DNA and they behave differently, and the market in which they evolve is different. And there is not one single recipe or things that you can just do and then you're guaranteed of growing. That just simply doesn't exist. So the journey that I went through was to ask myself, how is there a way to think about this differently? And can we shift from an emotional reaction to a more scientific, data-driven approach to solving that problem of growth? And the big epiphany I had back in 2014 was that you can only achieve maximum growth within your target market. It's always relative to the market in which you operate as a business.
Mm-hmm.
You can only achieve that maximum growth when your business and your target market are perfectly aligned.
Yes.
So fundamentally a matter of alignment, and it's very complex. It's a bit like a mechanical watch with many, many gears. And if you start to misalign those gears, maybe the watch will continue working, but you will introduce friction and it starts to slow down, and eventually it will stop ticking. And businesses are very similar to mechanical watches. They are complicated, they are sensitive, they have to be resilient in challenging environments. And it's all a matter of making sure that the alignment between the business and its target market is realized. And that's how you achieve growth in your business.
Gosh, I want to unpack that because when you said it, first off, I'm completely riveted.
Mhm.
And you said something that was, I think a lot of people take for granted, like they know how to do it, or there's some simplicity involved
Yes.
in really honing in on your target market.
Mhm.
Because you hear that all the time. You really have to align with your target market.
Yeah.
But for me, I don't think that's a simple little, oh, we just align with our target market and throw a dart on the wall and go, there's our target market. And I
Right.
think that's I think a lot of that is done right now.
Yes.
And when we say target market and connecting those dots together, I would like to know, what do you mean when you say alignment with your target market? Like, what are some of the key aspects that you think your message or your business or your product has to align in such a way in order to have that better sales catalyst?
Yeah. It's a really good question. The definition of alignment between any business and its target market can actually be broken down into 4 universal axes of alignment.
Ooh,
The stunning fact is that those 4 universal axes of alignment are truly universal. So I can take Left Bank or La Coupa, which is a famous cafe in Paris, and I can take Tesla and American Airlines and Bank of America, any business, and they must realize those 4 alignments. And let me tell you very quickly what they are.
yeah, I'd love
First
it.
one is that the pain of the customer and the claim that the business makes to address that pain have to be aligned.
Yeah.
So, Vickie, if you come to me with a headache and I show you a stomachache pill, obviously your pain and my claim are not aligned, you will never buy my pill and you shouldn't.
That's right.
That's the first axis. The second one is that the perception, which is the understanding of the claim, and the message, which is the expression of the claim, have to be aligned. So imagine I have the right pill for your headache. It costs 99 cents. Your headache will be gone in 10 minutes. But let's assume I describe it to you in Korean. I'm assuming you don't speak Korean. You will never buy the pill because you're going to be like, what the heck is this guy talking about? Even though it's the perfect pill for your headache.
Yeah.
That's the second axis of alignment. The third one is the way customers want to buy the product or the service. The
Ooh,
way that product is sold in the marketplace have to be aligned. So if
yeah.
I say, Vickie, you can get my pill, but you have to fly here to the Bay Area in Palo Alto, where I am now, and you can get the pill, you're going to say, wait a minute, I'm in LA, and why can't I just walk to the pharmacy next door and buy it over there? That's
That's
the
right.
third axis of alignment. And the fourth one is the most exciting one to me because I actually stole it out of the Apple playbook. So I spent 3 years at Apple, and the last year I worked directly for Steve Jobs. And if any of you wonder how I lost my hair, now you know the answer.
It's funny. I just rewatched the Steve Jobs movie
Movie, oh,
like 2 days ago.
I cannot watch that movie. My wife started to watch it, and she said, "Come, let's watch the movie." And I started to watch it, and after 5 minutes, I said, "Steve doesn't have that voice. He doesn't move this way. He would have never said something like this." And I could not connect the actor to Steve. And it's like, I can't watch this thing. This is not Steve. This is too fake. And so I wasn't able to watch the movie.
Mm.
But in any case, there are there are 3 fundamental lessons I learned from Steve, but one of them is relevant to this discussion. And when I left Apple, and it's actually interesting because I realized that I understood this after I left Apple, not while I was over there. But I realized that there is one and only one single business on this planet. In other words, we are all in the same unique business. There are no 2 or 3 businesses, there is only one. And that unique business is the manufacturing and delivery of delight.
Oh,
When you buy a
yes.
product or a service, you have a certain delight expectation. As you consume that product or that service from discovery all the way to disposal, that delight has to be met. And so the fourth alignment axis is between the expected delight and the delivery, or what's
Delight.
being given to the consumer. And that's the fourth one. So the four axes of alignment are that the pain of the customer and the claim the business makes have to be aligned,
Mm-hmm.
that the perception, which is the understanding of the claim, and the message, which is how that claim is communicated to the customer, those two things have to be aligned. And then the way the business is selling the product and the way the customer wants to buy have to be aligned. And then finally, the expected delight from that customer and what is delivered to that customer have to be aligned. And if you
Beautiful.
perfectly align your business along those four universal independent axes of alignment, you will realize the maximum growth rate within your target market.
I got to tell you, my heart lit up. I mean, really lit up with the fourth one, because we always are so bottom line. But I think the delivering the delight in
Yeah.
whatever way. I have a friend of mine who is just a black belt in manufacturing, and that's her big thing. We deliver delight, and she's so focused on that. And when you said that, it really hit me, because prior to going live, we were talking about businesses and the ability for it to transform the world, and that is why entrepreneurship to me is a type of healing. It's a type of healing for the planet when you make the considerations of those four things. When you were talking about it, though, I thought, okay, this is Apple. They're one of the most famous companies ever done, with one of the most famous iconic leaders of any company.
Yeah.
And I wondered, what filters did you have in place before, like when you say we align these four things, or even in your blueprint, when you align these four things, is there a filter you have in place that makes sure that you actually have alignment? Because a lot of people, I think, and I know for myself, after, I've started 18 businesses. 6 failed miserably, but 13 were okay, and we did good.
A good hit rate.
It was. And so, but the thing that I realized when you were talking, that I always kind of rush through, is I always think I know my target market the second I design the product. If
Mhm.
I get an idea for the product, I think I know the target market. And I realize now that may not be true. And
Mhm.
what's the filter to have in place when you think, oh, here's the target market, and you start doing your research? What do you have in place to double check, so to speak, what that message, and whether you're meeting all four of those targets?
Yeah, and it's a really good question. I think you start by understanding the pain that you're addressing. You have to be able, in one sentence, to say, my company exists to solve that problem, that pain.
Yeah.
And it has to be very crisp. And it cannot be general, like I'm going to solve, the global climate change problem. It
Mm-hmm.
has to be very specific. Then the next step is who to identify and understand who has that pain. Because some people
Mm-hmm.
don't have the pain, some people have the pain, but it's not high enough. It's an inconvenience, as I called
Mm-hmm.
it. It's not a pain. They're not going to pay for it. And
Mm-hmm.
some people truly have a pain, meaning that if you solve that pain, you will make a real impact and it is significant to them. And
Yeah.
it's that significance that translates into the ability to pay for resolving that pain. So you start with the pain, you start with understanding your target market, which is the collection of people who have that pain, and you have to segment it, understand, because not everybody is the same. So you have to understand a segmentation framework. What lenses am I going to apply to understand the different market segments? And then once you're done with that exercise, you look at, okay, what claim are we making? So for example, if the pain I address is migraine, to go back to this
Mm-hmm.
example we talked about earlier, then the question is, well, do I diminish the migraine by 20%, or do I make the migraine go away forever, or do I make the migraine go away for an hour and then it comes back? And what are the secondary effects, of my medicine?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that's really important is a claim in our world doesn't exist without pricing. And the reason is, if I were to tell you you can fly from Los Angeles to Paris in 2 hours, are you interested? Of course, you're going to say yes, as opposed to sitting on a plane for 9 or 10 hours.
Mm-hmm.
The real question is, if I make the claim that I can fly you from LA to Paris in 2 hours, that is not a claim because there is no pricing. Now, if I said, Vickie, you can fly from LA to Paris, but it's going to cost you $127,000, well, you're going to look at it very differently than if I said, well, it's going to be about 50% more than the Air France flight.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly you're like, okay, maybe it's worth paying it because I'm going to do it in 2 hours. So as part of the claim, it's not only I am going to address that particular pain that I've identified, but it's also being able to put a pricing on this. Because depending on the pricing, the ability for people to solve their pain is going to be very high or very low, depending on what they can truly pay for it and what they think the value really is.
This is so fascinating to me because in my mind, when I look at making claims, because I started going over, and I know that a lot of entrepreneurs or even people who are just business owners, they get the idea in their mind and they run with the idea without running these filters through.
Yeah.
And, after you get bit a couple of times on the bum, then you, with your own mistakes or your own whatever,
Yeah.
I spend a lot more time thinking about that versus, and to me, the think tank idea for a company, I spend a lot of time studying the pain. And
Mhm.
to me, this is such an interesting thing because I write books like you do. And the first thing I do is when I start the filter process is I could be anywhere and listen to the pain be talked about over and over and over again. The pain just gets talked about. And at that point, what's um, what's important to me is the do you have a set of steps to identify the pain? Because what I find is what I think is the overall pain, there's also secondary and tertiary pains,
Yeah.
or kind of that fallback, and I really want to understand that as well. And I could literally be at a dinner party and just listening to people talk, and they'll tell you where the pain is.
Mhm.
And I can start asking questions from that point. But I'm wondering if you're just sitting with your, oh my God, I got this idea for a business and I really want to do this. And it's really filling you up with drive and enthusiasm. Then you need to stop there and go, okay, let's identify what the pain is. Do you have a step by step or a step process that you say, let's go find that secondary, tertiary, and quaternary pain in there and find the whole pain, not just the partial point of the pain?
Yeah, so a lot of mistakes that I see entrepreneurs make is that they come with this idea and they identify a pain, and most of the time it's a pain that they themselves have suffered from.
Correct.
And
Correct.
the mistake they make is they extrapolate that to thinking the whole world, and I'm exaggerating on
Mhm.
purpose, the whole world has the same pain.
That's right.
What
They think
happens is
that.
they solve that pain. They are convinced it's a pain because they lived it, so they know they suffered from it, so they are convinced that it's a pain. And they start to build a product, they go to market, and they realize nobody's buying. And the reason nobody's buying is because it's not really a pain, it's an inconvenience, or it's a pain that very few have. And so your market sizing is so small that there is no there. There is no business there. So what's the process? The process is to ask people, what is it that prevents you from sleeping? When you get up in the morning, what is your number one issue? What's in the forefront of your thinking in terms of challenges? And if you ask that to enough people and you listen in an objective way, you will start to extract common themes. And you said, oh my gosh, I talked to 17 chief operating officers or chief marketing officers, and they all tell me that their number one problem is that. Then you start to be on something, and then you can say, okay, it doesn't exist today, but if I were to come to you with this kind of solution at that pricing, how much interest would you have? And if you really listen carefully and be able to be objective, which is really hard, just be able to hear the fact that maybe your idea is not working. Maybe they don't have the pain and be able to walk away from it. And that's really hard. And entrepreneurs tend to stick too much on their idea and their view, and therefore their ability to listen is diminished, and they are not willing to pivot because they're like, well, I was convinced that this is a good idea. And most of the time, it is a great idea. That's not the issue. The issue is who really cares and why would they buy at that pricing?
God, this is so fascinating. One of the businesses I did with a, a bunch of other entrepreneurs. There were actually three couples that broke down into six people, and
Mm-hmm.
everybody owned a business outside of the business that we were starting. And we started an ice cream store, and we started it based on it was a small town, very big on tourism. And we literally spent just gobs of time talking about the pain and the
Mm-hmm.
pain in its level, like, oh, there's no place for families to go, and
Yeah.
there's no place for where the children hang out, and we did this over and over and over and over again till we came to the point where you're like, okay, the ice cream store, there's a family thing, blah blah blah. And its success rate in the beginning, because we did that piece of it, just skyrocketed. And what we found when we did that was, there's so much less stress. Nobody needed the profits from the business at all. So we got to put it right back out in the community. And I really learned a lot from that one. But I want to say, I think that is one of what you just said, that mystery of really contemplating and sitting down with a good idea and being open. If your original idea wasn't that great, it doesn't mean throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it does mean re-examine it in a different way. And I think you have to be kind of a open person for that particular kind of set. Now I want to go into companies right
Sorry
now.
to cut you off. I want to make another
Right.
comment on this
Yeah.
topic because it's important. I have been on 22 boards. I just joined my 22nd board in January. And I have never seen a successful company that didn't pivot. I have never seen a company where if I were to show you the original business plan and
So
how
true.
they are, you cannot make that connection.
Yeah.
And so successful entrepreneurs, and part of it is because the market is very dynamic. You have, new technology, innovation, you have competition coming, you have money from the VC or the PE, private equity world, and suddenly they throw a wrench at everything, and suddenly what was true maybe a year ago, 6 months ago, is no longer true. And so the successful entrepreneurs are the one who recognize changes and are able to adapt and said, forget about this whole idea. It
Yep.
didn't work, doesn't matter. Let's not dwell
And
on this.
pivot.
Understand the opportunity today and where we think the market is going, and let's build on that.
Oh gosh, God, I love what you're saying. That my hair just caught fire. This is a big deal
Yeah,
because
yeah, that's
it's every business. Every business goes through that.
yeah,
You think you're
yeah,
starting this, and then you end up with this over here. And along the way, there's been transformation and something that you mold, and another pivot, and it could be anything out there. But I think that's the best part of entrepreneurship. That
like,
right there, it's allowing yourself to be present to the moment
mhm,
and letting the moment lead you to success,
yeah.
because you'll know how to figure it out along the way. Now, is that always, peaceful? No, it's stressful, but at the same time, there's something so amazingly awakening for that. I love this conversation. Now, listen, if you are an entrepreneur right now and you have a business, and right now you're thinking, oh my God, I need his help. Well, we're now going to pivot a little bit, and I want to talk about how he can help you or what he does. And do you have a copy of your book there so you can hold it up and go, hey, this is the book, Aligning the Dots? This to me this is one of the most important books you can read. The conversations we are having right now. This is a guy who worked directly with Steve Jobs, took Apple from 0 to 350 million. Does he know what he's doing? Yes. But Apple's only one of the companies he's worked with. It's like he's built other companies. He's sold companies. This is a guy who's so experienced in connecting the dots. And maybe right now you're finding the future challenging, and you're wishing to yourself, okay, I need somebody to help me. So I know you're a CEO, and I get it, but you don't have to do it all alone. And maybe there's a board there, but you don't have to do it all alone. You can actually go get some help from somebody who's done this over and over and over again. Tell me, what do you do for companies right now when if they are like, hey, we need you?
Well, we have this very well-crafted approach to top-line revenue growth. And it's based on those four axes of alignment. We have about 20 tools where we can measure each coefficient of alignment between 0 and 100%.
Wow.
And then by virtue of measuring and understanding the insights of where the misalignments are, then we develop what we call the growth playbook, which is basically a mini operating plan that's very specific to the business and that tells the CEO what to do on Monday morning at 8 o'clock. And they can start implementing it, and they will grow faster and they will create more shareholder value. And that's the way we approach. So it's a very data-driven, scientific. There is no emotion. It's not what I think that matters. It's what the market truth is, and we can extract those based on our methodology and alignment. And it's a very rigorous process, very scientific in many ways. And that's what I like about it. It's not about, based on our experience. It's about based on measuring. I always say, well, like doctors, but the difference is we have an X-ray machine and an MRI machine and a blood work machine in our office. And what we do is we show an X-ray and we say, you see that line? That's a fracture. And you should really wear a cast for 12 weeks. And we basically give the prescription. That's the growth playbook. That's what we give the CEO. And then we can help them implement it if that's the decision they want to make. If they don't want to implement, it's like, or doctor, we gave you the prescription, you didn't want to take the pills, that's your life, and that's okay with us.
So I want to ask a kind of a different question.
Mm-hmm.
In the alignment phases, there's 4. Is part of the tertiary alignment or another alignment the culture you have? And what if that's the thing that needs to pivot? And how do you address that if that's part of the thing that needs to pivot?
Yeah, so it's a brilliant question. When you look at the 4 axes of alignment that I described, it's to realize the alignment between the business and its target market.
Yeah.
Now, there is a 5th alignment, so it's really 4 plus 1, which is the internal alignment.
Yes.
And it's very clear that if the organization is not internally aligned, they will not be successful in executing the 4 external alignment, and they will not grow. So the last chapter of the book is actually dedicated to this internal alignment. And part of it is, do I have the right talent in the company? And in most cases that we see, they don't. And it's like, do I need to change the culture? And what does that mean? Is there a leadership question that we need to address differently? How do I draw them into this vision that now we need to execute alignments in a different way than we did before? So this is fundamental and crucial. But this internal alignment can only be realized once you understand what the 4 alignments are. Otherwise, there's no alignment, right? The team is like, well, we don't know what to do. Now you say, well, we have to define the claim and the pain. Well, now suddenly everybody's focused on that, and you can start to realize this internal alignment. So it is critical, but it's almost a second step after defining exactly for the business what the 4 alignments really look like.
God, I'm so riveted to the conversation about this because I think that success starts exactly. It's like everybody tells you want to put the foundations in, and this is such a key piece of the foundation of any business or any message that you're putting out to the world, any kind of alignment. Even if I go buy a business, I'm looking at these things right here, because it's like, if you're going to invest, what are you investing in? And part of your due diligence, I think a hunk of your due diligence is this piece. And I think it is something that oftentimes is ignored for, bottom line numbers and ratios between products and expenses and looking at everything else. It's one of the most forgotten pieces. And here it is one of the most it's like a, what do they call it in construction when you have that a wall, a certain
Framing.
beam, the framing of the wall, that beam, that supporting,
Yeah.
that supports the whole house. This is it. This is the foundational piece. I am so fascinated by the conversation that we're having, and I know that so many companies might be aligned in like two areas, and that's carrying their whole business. And these other two or three areas, because it's 4+1 in my book, are not aligned. And suddenly, when they hit an economic wave that isn't favorable for them, they don't have these other two studs, if you will, on the back there that are going to carry their business through that economic wave, and everything gets wonky in that business. I know I've made that mistake. I want to talk about the other thing they need to have in place. So now you've been to their business, they've pivoted, they now have everything aligned, and you're going to give them 12 weeks. And one of the things I know that really bit me in the butt, I mean, if I had to say which the biggest lesson I ever learned where I got my butt kicked in business, it was when I grew too fast. And so now you've given this, and you've given them 12 weeks to go ahead. Now their productivity is going up because they know what to do Monday morning. This is a whole different ball of wax. Do you have things in place for them that say, as this starts growing, this is where you want to shore this up first, then shore this up, then shore this up? Is there part of the auditing plan that helps them absorb the growth and scaling in a more healthy way?
Yeah. Again, this is a really terrific question. I always, there's two things. One is when I talk about growing a business, my question is always, people know their growth rate, right? They know how fast they're growing their revenue.
Yeah.
My question to them is, well, how fast is your market growing, the market in which you're operating?
Brilliant.
Beating that market or not? So if I come to you and says, well, I'm growing at 50% a year, which is a good growth, like, well, if I'm in a market that's growing at 300% a year, I am actually losing market share. Somebody else is eating my lunch. That's not good. And if I'm growing at 2% a year in a market that's declining at minus 20% a year, then that's really, really good.
Yeah, it is.
Always, you have to compare the growth rate to the growth rate of your market. And then the second thing I want to say, which is really important, because you alluded to this, I think of growth like wine. And it's not because I'm French, but if you have a good glass or two glasses of a good Bordeaux, I think it's a terrific experience. If you're by yourself and drink the same wine, but you drink the entire bottle and you get drunk, I think that's not a good experience, even though it's exactly the same wine. So I think growth has to be approached in a responsible way, the same way you want to drink. And what I mean by that is that we suffer from this issue in Silicon Valley. Again, I've been in Silicon Valley for 31 years. I've seen that movie so many times, where the pressure to grow fast from the board, from the VCs, from the investors, from competition is so high that you raise more and more money to fuel that fire. The problem is the fire gets out of control and you end up burning everything.
Yeah.
And so there is a natural pace at which a business can grow because of its DNA, of its culture, of the way it operates. You have to be respectful of that. And there is the growth pace of the market, and you have to harmonize those things. So growing for the sake of growth, I think, to me, is a mistake. Now that the market, the public market and Wall Street is up and down, people are going back to the basics, which is, by the way, are we going to be profitable? So we talk about line of sight to profitability, which is critical in a business. And now you start to see, the Silicon Valley and others saying, okay, well, maybe we need to slow down to be profitable. It's like, why didn't you have that conversation 2 or 3 years ago? And so I think that companies should not grow faster than they can. They cannot be ahead of their skis. And you have to understand what is the natural pace to grow, what is the natural pace to hire and spread the culture without changing the DNA, by preserving the culture. We need to train. I mean, I see so many young people going into the workforce And I asked them, I said, well, how long was your training? He's like, I didn't get any training. I studied on Monday morning. I don't know what I'm doing, but I'm trying to figure it out. And when I went to Apple, we had like 10 days of training, just training. Everybody was the same training. And it's like about culture and ethics and protection of data and security and all kinds of things. And it's really important to understand what are you capable of in terms of growth, and how does that measure against your market. And you have to do it in a very thoughtful way.
I love this conversation so much. I thought there's so many, every time you say something, my mind is like over here going, wow, this, then this, and this, and this. And I'm, looking at my past companies and thinking, oh, this is so important. I want to go in a different way right now and ask you about one of the things that I know, and I want to go back to knowing your customer, knowing this, and delivering delight. And I want to look at COVID and how that's damaged delight. And I want to look at consumer trust and how we can grow more consumer trust. Because I think the bottom line right now is that consumers are just absolutely mistrusting. How is it that we can make, because I think that's a pain for the business, but I also think it's a bigger pain for the consumer, and it's an unspoken about pain. And in this conversation, what I'm wondering is, how can we earn consumer trust back through delight, through that messaging? And how did COVID damage any of these 4 areas that we've been talking about getting your messaging right, etc.? And if there's things we can do about it. I know I just asked like 4 questions at once, but pick one and answer one.
Let me try to parse them a little bit and unpack them. First of all, you made a really good point, which is that if I want to run a marathon, it's about 26.2 miles, I need oxygen. Doesn't matter how good or bad I am, doesn't matter anything. If I don't have oxygen, I can run. There are no transactions, which is the exchange of money for goods or services, without the equivalent of oxygen, which is trust.
Yes.
So trust is not sufficient, but it's absolutely necessary. And if you don't establish trust, if I don't trust a business, I'm not going to do business with that business. I'm going to buy for them. The second thing is, trust is not imposed or commanded. Trust is earned.
That's
and
right.
How do you do that? You don't do that by saying, well, trust me. Every time somebody says trust me, my first reaction is like, I'm not going to trust you.
I don't trust you now.
Say that. You earn trust by managing expectations. It really comes down to this. When I go to a McDonald's, so you can go to a 3-star Michelin restaurant and you pay hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Your expectation of service and quality of food and quality of wine is very high. You can go to a McDonald's and spend 99 cents for a cheeseburger. I would argue it's the same product. You're putting food in your stomach. There's no real difference. But of course, your expectation is vastly different. And so the trust starts by the business has to be very clear to me as a prospect, what is it that I should expect? If you're Amazon, I expect the package to come on Friday because that's for me, and I expect the package to be not damaged. And when I open the box, I expect to find in the box what I order. That's expected. Imagine if Amazon would ship the wrong box to you and they say on Friday and then on Monday you still don't have the package. Well, they wouldn't be in business for a long time. So business shouldn't ask themselves, what do I need to do to gain trust? They should ask themselves, what is the right level of expectation I need to tell the prospect? And can I deliver slightly above? You don't want to over-deliver because then you're leaving money on the table, your pricing is not optimized, and you certainly don't want to be below. So it really boils down to expectation. McDonald's doesn't tell me that I expect to have, a white cloth and servers, waitress will come and ask me 5 times, if I'm happy. They're like, you want cheeseburger? Here it is. It's 99 cents, and you go, and that's fine. And by the way, they are very profitable, very good business. So there's nothing, it is nothing wrong with that. But my expectation walking into a McDonald's is quite different from a 3-star Michelin restaurant, in London or Paris.
This is brilliant. I loved what you just said. It really struck a chord with me because I think, one of the things we don't look at when we start some of the business, everybody starts out with hope. And
Mhm.
what I like about your approach is scientific. There's just we don't run on hope. We run on data-driven scientific knowingness
Yeah.
that we've sat down and sculpted for you at the beginning
Mhm.
or in the middle of a pivot or in uncertain weather. There's a way to do this where you can manage it differently. And I love that because I know as an entrepreneur, I know this. I know how excited I get. In fact, I don't know about you, but Philippe, I know you must have been out with dinner and somebody says, I have an idea for a business. And then when they start talking about it, you're just like, wow, this is what a fantastic idea.
Yeah.
And you get that adrenaline through your body and you're like, wow, this is a great idea. And then suddenly having to sit down and ask the questions. And to me, that minimum viable product is what's the expectation of that?
Mhm.
Because you have to outline that for you to even know how to delight them, how
And
to
how to
delight
communicate.
them in such a way.
Yeah. And
And
how you communicate. Yeah.
to me, that's one of the first things that it's like they move past those ideas. We're so caught up in the energy of the startup piece of it.
Yeah, and I think the other challenge is that so entrepreneurs by definition have to be optimistic and enthusiastic. They have to be.
Mhm.
You never create a business if you don't have those attributes. But the difficulty is not the idea, and you cannot just fall in love with the idea. And most of the case, it is a good and brilliant idea, and it makes sense. The hard part is the 99.9% of the work, which is how do you transform that idea into the business and
Yeah,
building
I
a
love that
product,
piece of
making
it.
sure it works and making sure it scales, and how you're going to support your product and how you're going to go to market and how you're going to brand it. That's where the non-mundane tasks of building a business are very critical and important, and they are not that exciting because you're into the weeds and you're trying to build something, and it's hard, and you can't just stop at the idea, otherwise you're an ideologist, and there's nothing wrong with that, but you're not going to be an entrepreneur and you're not going to be successful in building a real business.
Thank you for that. I love that level of discernment. Everybody has to have that, and I feel like there's part of me that's growing through this conversation right now about looking at all the businesses because, I get pitched every single day. If they don't want me to invest in it, they want me to invest some time in it,
Yeah.
and I love the way that you've communicated this in such an interesting way. I want to talk about the company right now that is not growing, but not failing. They're just stable forever and ever and ever. And the business isn't growing, it's just stable. Now, it could have great profits. Maybe it's, 30% or 50% margin, whatever it is.
Mhm.
But let's say they decide they want to scale out. What's the first of the 5 things they need to look at? The culture pieces, all the things you've named. Where is when something goes flat and wants to scale out or grow?
Yeah.
Where's the first thing they would look at?
Yeah.
They would go,
So
look at this.
yeah, so let me preface by saying something important. There are many, many businesses that are flat, they are not growing, and they are cash flow positive and they're
Yep,
profitable. And I call that lifestyle businesses. And by the way, most of the industry in this country is driven by those businesses. They can't
yep,
really grow. If you're a restaurant owner, you're not going to double your pricing and you cannot add twice the amount of tables because you don't have the
agreed.
physical space. If you're a dentist or doctor, there's many, many of those businesses. I have the utmost respect for those businesses, by the way, and they are really critical to the fabric of the economy of this country.
I agree.
Now, if a business like this decides I want to grow, and you ask me, well, which one of the 4+1 axis should they focus on? The answer is, well, they should focus on the 4+1. It's a little bit akin to asking me as a doctor, well, should I pay attention? Which one is more important, my heart or my lungs? You have no choice. You got to breathe and you got to pump your blood. So I would say, and I got this question all the time. He says, well, if my message is not aligned with my perception, and then the way I sell is not aligned with the way people want to buy, which one should I fix first? And it's like, you need to fix both. You're not going to grow if you only fix one. Now, it is true that there is a natural sequencing, which is you always start with the pain and the claim. That's always the beginning. Like the way you always start by listening to the heart. Well, okay, your heart is beating. That's good. Now I can go to the breathing, and I can go to your oxygen level, and I can go to those things. So there is no shortcut. Those 4+1 vital signs of a business are critical, the same way it is for a human being. But you got to start with the pain and the claim, because if you don't have a good identified pain and a claim that's reasonable, that's true, that's defendable, that's provable, then the rest doesn't exist. If your heart is not pumping, it doesn't matter whether you have good lungs or not. You're not going to live very long. And so
That's
that's
right.
the answer to your question. I wish they were just like, oh, this one is more important than the other one, but there isn't.
I
It's
love this. I love your answer, actually. I always have the best experts in the world on the show. And I love that we've talked about delighting people, being able to look at the message and the claim, being able to understand the pain that you're looking at, being able to take a look at your business, not just as something that is how do I get profits, but really how do I deliver on that? And I love that it's taken entrepreneurship into a more servant kind of view as to how to become profitable by serving others in the highest way. I really like that, and I think there's lots of profits to be made with having that particular mindset.
Yeah.
I want to start talking about. I want to talk about your book. I want to talk about what they're going to learn. Uh, I think everybody should, if you've been listening to this show and you're not already on Amazon right now buying his book, you're crazy, because the next thing I'm going to do when I get off this is go read that book. Usually I've read it before the show happens, but I'm behind on a couple of the books I'm reading now for other shows. But now I put this book right up top, and I love the idea of the data-driven thing. And if you're looking for ways to become just a better entrepreneur, a better business owner, better at looking at your business and knowing what you need to do on Monday, then read that book. But what if you decide you want to be working with him? What if you want to bring him into your company and have him look at what is going on or what's going wrong or how you can delight it? Tell us a little bit about the book and how they can work with you.
Yeah, and I mean, I wrote the book not with the idea of selling thousands and thousands of copies, although the book has been very successful, but that wasn't my goal. My goal was to educate business people and entrepreneurs and CEOs and investors and board members about a very new way to approach that challenge of growth. And I've been on this education quest for a while, because the traditional ways of growing just don't work, in my opinion.
Agreed.
They are not working, and they're not working because they tend to be knee-jerk reactions. They tend to be emotional. They are not data-driven. There is no answer to why should we do that, whereas the book will give you a clear answer. So the book really explains, in double clicks on all those 4+1 axis of alignment that we talked about. There's 20 case studies, so you can really see how we do those things. You can see how we measure some of the tools that we've developed. We actually shared and published in the book. So you can really understand, well, what does it mean that my claim versus pain coefficient of alignment is 47.3%, and where does the gap come from? So the book is very pragmatic. It's very actionable. It's not philosophy. It's about what is it that you really need to do to start understanding how well you're aligned with your target market. And that's the whole objective of the book, so that people can finish reading it and start to have action and say, okay, well, I'm going to try that. I'm going to try to define my claim and my pain in one sentence, for example. And that's what they will find in the book.
I can't wait to read it. So if you're wondering what I'm reading this weekend, it's his book. Hands down. I'm so excited. My hair's on fire. I'm trying to be all cool because I'm hosting the coffee break
You
show,
look
but
cool.
really, I'm like, I'm like, wow, this is so exciting. I can't wait to learn this. To me, this is like holistic business. Like it's carefrontationally put together business acumen. And I love that. It worked for many companies. It obviously worked for Apple in that way, and having this kind of mindset moving forward. I totally agree with you. I think some of the past ways that we've run businesses aren't going to work right now. And I think going forward, that's kind of the revolution and evolution in entrepreneurship, is that one step up. And I think there is a focus now, or at least in my circles of entrepreneurship, where the fast buck is dying and the absolute delighting and having long-term clients, long-term people who do business with you because they know that you are taking care of them, that you really understand them. It's like in our business, we have, in our group of people, we have this saying, show me that you know me, show me that you know me. And my messaging has to show people that I know them well enough that they say, yes, I want to listen to this coffee break show. It's for me. I want to be part of this community. It's for me. Show me that you know me. And I believe that your system is actually, so it is that thing, data driven, scientific. I love that you said, don't make decisions that are knee jerk reactions. I can attest to the fact that that doesn't work. And sometimes people can perceive you and think, I don't know where my CEO went, or this nice person I work with, but right now you're being kind of a butthead. And that reaction where you're not sleeping at night, etc. I think those things, this is actually a beautiful way to evolve as an entrepreneur, and it gives you such a vast view of the possibilities and the due diligence that you need to do on every business. I'm like, just because a business is profitable and all the numbers look good, your balance sheet is great and everything, your P&L statements are just nifty 50 and it
Right.
all looks good. If you don't understand who they're serving, why they're serving, you can't improve that business when you buy it and take it over. It has been such a really cool conversation. Listen, I'd like you to hold your book up one more time. Everybody go get this book. If you're running a business right now, you need to align the dots. You need to get to the point where this alignment of these 4+1 dots are in your business acumen such a way that they're just in you in that unconscious way. You can get it on Amazon. So if you guys are looking for him, it's Philippe Bouissou,
Bouissou, yeah, and people can,
Bouissou.com.
yeah, philippebouissou.com, or they can just go on aligningthedots.com, which is probably easier. Um,
Alignthedots.com.
yeah, aligningthedots.com. And then, feel free to contact with me on LinkedIn. This is really a good way to get hold of me.
Now, listen, I know you're listening. If you're on Pandora, if you're on iHeartRadio, if you're on Apple, and if you're on Audible Live, relax. Everything's in the show notes. Drive safe wherever you're going. The book's still going to be there. Don't try to text and drive or try to make notes of it. It's all there. You can do it, and just be safe. It's in the scroll right now, the address, and the book is on Amazon, Aligning the Dots. And you can go ahead and read that book, contact him, and fundamentally learn what the evolutions are in business. Philippe, thank you for being on the show
Well,
today. It
I,
was magnificent.
I,
I'm literally, my hair is on fire.
well, it was a delight. I thought, your questions were so insightful and so good, and you obviously get it. And I think
Mhm.
the show is terrific. And thank you so much for being a guest. It's a real pleasure, and I really appreciate it.
I love it. So every week on the Coffee Break Show, we always bring you the best of the best in the world. Today was no exception. I will see you next week on the Coffee Break Show, where we're going to have another really fabulous guest. I'll see you guys next week. Thank you.